Hello, everyone. This is your second lecture for the fifth week of technical writing. In this lecture, I want to cover what's called genre studies and let you know a little bit about how technical communication scholars think about genre and how we think they work. And so this gets a little theoretical again, but it's something I didn't want you to leave this course without at least having a kind of baseline knowledge in. We've worked with a lot of different genres in this course. We did sort of a how-to guide with our favorite music. We did some job postings. We did performance reviews, and so on. So here's kind of the backdrop of that for scholars and how we think about genres and how they develop. The first phrase, this comes from Carolyn Miller, and we say genre is a social action. I'll cite her essay below, but it's of the same name. It's a long essay with a lot of good insights, but I'm going to boil it down to this quotation here, just to keep this lecture a little on the short side. She writes that for the critic, genres can serve both as an index to cultural patterns and as tools for exploring the achievements of particular speakers and writers. For the student, genre serves as keys to understanding how to participate in the actions of a community. And so this is probably the one we're most familiar with here is tools for exploring the achievements of particular speakers. When we think about some writers and what they have produced, we say, okay, that's definitely in a particular genre. Here you might think about like fantasy and which authors you associate with that, or horror and which authors you associate with that. But for the critic, and I think here we're getting a little bit into technical and professional communication, though Carolyn Miller would not have called it that. That was kind of before we started to use that phrase. But the important ones to think about here are genre can serve both as an index to cultural patterns, and this last part about how to participate in the actions of a community. And so what does it mean for a genre to be an index to cultural patterns? Well, this encourages us to ask questions like, how has this genre changed in relation to the society around it? And then that's kind of a mutual question where we can think about how has society changed because we have new genres? Or the genre has changed in a particular way. So to use your own experience so far in this course, we can think about job postings. Before, you might have had to look for a job posting in the classified section of a newspaper. But now we see them pretty much everywhere. You can find them on LinkedIn, you can find them on Google, you can find them on Indeed.com. So as those media became available, we saw job postings that can be a little bit more detailed, maybe, or that can be more usable. They can have links to other pages and so on. And that's kind of, again, one of those mutual questions. So now that there are a bunch of job postings with different looks out there and they're more readily available, how does society and how does our culture change as a result of that genre having new iterations? And then you can also think about how have large historical changes affected this genre. And so if you think about big historical changes like new presidential elections, historical calamities, the world wars, 9/11, things like that, how do these big historical events change the way we start to think about how we put pen to paper and how we write? And so these are kinds of questions that technical writers like to ask. And then secondly, understanding how to participate in the actions of a community. You can think about how does this genre help me invent the world around me? And so if you do encounter maybe a performance review or a job description, you can kind of read between the lines and say, okay, well, what does this particular company value? How are they demonstrating these values through this genre? And then the next step would be to say, okay, so how do I now understand my relation to the company and how I need to work in it and operate in it? And so those are a couple of the ways we think about genre in technical writing. Another way to think about it is as a node, which is a part of a network or a system. And so you've heard that phrase systemic a lot, and here it is again. But like culture, genres are systemic. It means they belong to systems themselves and they interact with the other systems around them. And so I'll ask you to consider the syllabus as an example a bunch of times here at the end of this lecture, because that's been my particular interest recently. But of course, syllabi belong to a system. They belong to what happens at the university. And so I have my syllabus for this course, but it's operating in relation to other pieces of writing like mission statements, university bylaws, and so on. And it's also sitting in relation to people's actions in the network. So what people are doing around campus, these things all affect how I write a syllabus, and also how the syllabus affects those things. And as always, they interact with systems around them. So, if somebody at a different university thinks, how can we improve? Maybe they look at some of the genres that UD produces, like again, like a mission statement or like a bylaw or like syllabi, and say, oh, maybe we can start to adapt those practices. And so we have these genre systems that are always kind of interacting with each other. Again, you can think in our course, to go a little bit smaller, of our assignments. We had the enjoying a favorite song assignment. We had the directions along a route. Again, the job description one. But you can think about what other systems that you assumed users are familiar with, either on a small scale or on a really large scale. So when you're thinking about the favorite song, maybe if you said this is best enjoyed on Apple Music or Spotify, well, if I have to sign up for an account, are you assuming that I understand the end user license agreement, that I understand the App Store, that I understand all these other things? Because those are genres that are going to affect whether I can actually follow your directions. And the same goes for directions along a route. And you can think really small for that, right? You assume that everybody's familiar with street signs and know what those mean. And maybe on a larger scale, are people familiar with lengths of distances? Some people said, travel a mile, travel 5 miles. That genre becomes a part of that network of knowledge and network of activities that, again, affect each other in a lot of different ways. And then lastly, we have genre ecologies. I'll cite like 3 articles below here that all discuss genre ecologies in different interesting ways. But the essential part of understanding genre ecology is just, again, understanding that genres do not exist in isolation from one another. So at all times, genres are always affecting other genres. And although that doesn't mean they're equal, some genres are more powerful than others. So again, let's think about the syllabus. So the syllabus is governed in some ways by federal law, right? I had to include the Title IX statement. If you scroll through some of the policies, it lays out that hey, federal law says I have to put this here. And so in some ways, those laws that get passed, really, they're just pieces of paper, pieces of legal writing, or maybe we might call them technical writing. They decide how my genre is going to look. But at the same time, maybe my syllabus is more powerful in other ways. In that it governs how student essays are going to look. If I have expectations listed on there, it means that the essay you're going to sit down and write is really affected by my genre, the one that I mastered. So that's what genre ecologies kind of imply. And again, it can affect how seriously you take other genres. So if you look at something like the university mission statement, and you see that UD is about deep learning and fostering the free exchange of ideas, you might look at my class and say, hey, that does a really good job. Or you might say, hey, that does a really bad job of following that mission. And either way you think about it, that shows you that hey, these genres are always in relation to one another. They never just exist by themselves. And so again, I might ask you to reflect a little bit on which genres you feel like you're a master of, and how those relate to other types of genres, types of technologies. But again, just a set of language and a set of knowledge I wanted you to be familiar with before the course ends. So one more lecture left. Like I said, it'll tie a lot of this stuff together. And as always, I appreciate your time. Thanks.